All right. I'm lucky enough to work for the Portland Art Museum. We're the 7th oldest museum in the country. So we've been around since 1892. So when you think about a hidebound institution that probably isn't interested in innovating, you might think of a place like ours. But it's not true. And so what we're going to do today is talk about a concept which we call Museum as Platform, which has been a mechanism for partnership and innovation across our institution. And it's been quite extraordinary. The goal of this is to really drive relevance within our institution, to make it really matter. And we do that through increasing community dialogue and by amplifying communication within the community around an exhibition concept. We begin with the exhibition objects and themes, and then we add different modalities, which can include architecture, art, dance, fashion, film, food, science, social sciences, media, even tattoos. I mean, we've gone pretty far with this. So we begin with an exhibition thesis, and it becomes sort of a hub and spoke experience, which is why we decided to use Prezi as the presentation tool, because it is that kind of hub and spokes kind of object. Process. Now, how is this different than regular museum programming or good museum programming? Good museum programming will activate inside the walls of the museum. When you're doing museum as a platform, well, you're activating the entire community, and it sort of actually leaves your own control. Now, this concept had its origins at the height of the Great Recession. We were 175 employees. We cut down to 125. We went from being a $17 million budget to a $12 million budget. So we were broke, and we were looking for something to do that would make a difference and really help us drive relevance. And so we knew of a major collection in our community that was M.C. Escher, and that we could get access to. And we also knew that there were people who had used tattoos of Escher on their bodies. And so you'll check this guy out right here, and he's actually completely covered with M.C. Escher tattoos. So we ended up doing an exploration of tattoos away from the M.C. Escher exhibit, where we looked at the art of tattoo within our Asian collection, within our contemporary art collection, within our photography collection, and within our Native American collection. And then we actually asked Portlanders to post tattoos to a site, Flickr site, which we then curated and posted. This was on the opening day of doing this. By the end of the exhibition, there would be 70 to 80 people watching people's tattoos across the museum. We even had a docent who would talk about the Escher exhibition and talk about her own tattoos. So it was pretty wild. So the whole thing was quite successful. And so today I'm going to use our current exhibit, or this summer's exhibition, Cyclepedia Iconic Bike Design, to show you 4 key elements of success related to the platform concept. And those key ideas are, first, you have to present relevant content. The second idea is the content will dictate the form and timing of the partnership. The third is that you curate independently from partners, and they curate independently from you. And then the fourth is everybody needs to be fully committed to the exhibition concept. So let me begin with present relevant content. So with the bike show, we really broke it into these 3 big buckets. We were going to explore bike design, bike culture, and the bike economy. So the bike design came from the initial portion. You're looking into the gallery there on the left, where we have Michael Embacher's collection. He wrote a book called Cyclepedia. He's an artist or he's an architect from Vienna who has amassed this incredible collection of amazing bikes that are pivotal moments in the evolution of bike design. And what's exciting about this is actually the 3rd of a series of design shows that we've done. So it's really looking at the relevance of design in everyday life. Now, to that, we added local bikes, because we just showed the bikes from Embacher's collection in Portland, in a biking city like Portland, we'd have seemed completely irrelevant and out of place. The 2 bikes on your right are one of the 23 different installations we did of local bikes. These are Renovos. They're actually made in Portland, and they're made out of hardwood, so they're pretty extraordinary, really sexy bikes. We also looked at bike culture in as many ways as we possibly could. The poster on the right talks about a WPA art tour that we drove, starting with our own WPA collection, but then biking across the city to look at other installations of WPA art. And there's many other examples of things we did with bike culture. And then we also looked at the bike economy. Within Portland, there are hundreds of bike businesses that are involved, from the local builders to cycling apparel, and we're sort of a hub for athletic apparel in general, with Nike and Columbia Sportswear and Adidas and Keen all headquartered in Portland. So all of this sort of economic side of this was really quite relevant across the community. We also, EMC Arts has actually funded a project with us around our Object Stories platform. And this is where we allow individual community members to tell stories related to to objects that are important in their own life. This woman is a wheel builder in Portland, and so you could go online and hear her stories about building wheels and what's that like in a world where wheels are generally a commodity. Second big content dictates form. With the bike partnerships, we could reach across the city and find partners almost immediately. But for many exhibitions, the timeline you have to work with is much longer. We did a major Mark Rothko exhibition a couple of years ago. Mark Rothko actually grew up in Portland as Mark Rothkowitz, went to Lincoln High School. So it was, in some ways, celebrating a local hero. I was telling one of my trustees about this, and she had just seen Red in London. So then I talked with my Equity Theater. They actually did one of the West Coast premieres of Red, and we cross-promoted with that. We also worked with New Angle Music to do Rothko's Chapel during that. Now, not everything works. When we were doing this, the bike show, we tried to get Lance Armstrong and his Damien Hirst bike, which sold for $500,000. Lance was a problem, as you all know, and so we didn't go there. We also, it doesn't work with every exhibition. We did an Ellsworth Kelly show, kind of hard to do the kind of partnerships and community activation around a minimalist concept. Probably the thing that has been most interesting about the bike show is when we were doing the bike show, we also had Gaston Lachey's. And so here you've got naked bronzes and bicycles, and as luck would have it, the World Naked Bike Ride occurred on the opening day of the exhibition. So we ended up partnering with the World Naked Bike Ride and had 10,000 naked people surrounding the museum the night we opened. We closed the museum at 6 o'clock, reopened at 8, and you could come into the galleries for $1 per each of clothing that you had on. So if you had on shoes and nothing else, you came in for free. We took almost 2,000 people through the galleries in the 2 hours we were open. All the people who worked were volunteers. It was pretty outrageous. Another way, this is all about creating spectacle. How do you break through? This is our logo, which we created on the side of the building out of Nutcase Helmets, which is a Portland company. You may be familiar with their helmets. So we got a bunch of their shells and just sort of brainstormed and ended up creating this sign, which then was tweeted and Facebooked and yada, yada, yada. The Boston Globe did not like all the naked people in our museum and sort of chided us for it. This story was carried all over the Globe. Art News ended up doing a story on the bike show not related to it. We also, had everything from bicycle smoothies to a hot tub delivered by bicycle. So we just, drove the conversation in as many directions as we possibly could. You do relinquish some control with partners when you do this kind of stuff. And so that can be really uncomfortable for museums, including ours, particularly an institution as old as ours. But again, we don't try to curate our partners' programs. So as long as you're doing that, and the World Naked Bike Ride is a big deal in Portland, so it was going to occur whether we did affiliated with them or not. So you really need, the last point is you really need 100% commitment from the entire team. And so within our museum, that really means from the executive director to curatorial to exhibition to collections to advancement to the finance people to our film center, so that you have everybody sort of on board and comfortable with some of the issues. I mean, again, staffing the museum for thousands of naked people coming through is an interesting discussion that you have to have internally to make it all work. So you've got to drive it through your entire institution. And then you also need incredible partners. We had 18 sponsors. We had 23 program partners. There were literally hundreds and hundreds of places where this touched the community, from major rides. There's a big event in Portland called Pedalpalooza. I mean, we just did as much as we can to integrate this and made it so that people knew about the exhibition and were hearing about the exhibition through their peers. And of course, there were hundreds of individual bike owners involved too. These are some of the partners, but you know, there's a bunch of subcults within biking. You've got recumbents, you've got folding, you've got electric, you've got the bike Fridays, and so we would host those groups, and they would actually talk about their bikes between the buildings in a program we called Bike Between the Buildings. To wrap this up, the museum's platform concept: 1, present relevant content; 2, that the content dictates the form and the timeline; 3, you don't try to curate your partner's work, and the more partners you have, the better; and then 4, everybody needs to be fully committed. You know, I got to do a shout out to a couple of my colleagues here, Maggie Hansen and Danae Hudson, who helped me put this together, and it wouldn't have come together without them. And that's it. Thank you.